Hi there, this is Unmesh from PiXimperfect, and in this episode we are going to talk about what looks like the coolest device out there for Photoshop. This, my friend, is the Loupedeck CT. Now, Loupedeck has been around for a while. One of the models that really got popular, especially in the last couple of years with photo editors, was the Loupedeck Plus. But this one is different. A fully customizable touchscreen and a navigation knob, which is also a touchscreen that looks like a big smartwatch. Claims to not only make the size way more compact, but also add a plethora of features. The question is, how practical is it? Or do you really need to have something like this? Maybe, maybe not. That's for you to decide, but it sure looks very intriguing. In this video, we'll look at 9 reasons why I feel Loupedeck CT is the coolest Photoshop controller yet. So without any further ado, let's get started. Back in the magical world of Loupedeck CT. And before we begin, some of you might ask, what is this thing? What does it actually do? Well, it is an editing console or a controller that makes controlling the software or applications easier. As simple as that. Let's start with the first reason why Loupedeck CT makes sense. The first one is easy access to tools and functions. You would notice that as soon as you jump into Photoshop, the icons change according to Photoshop. Now everything has a visual appeal. Every icon is visually noted down here because this is a screen. It's not a button that you have to assign and remember. It's a screen. Also, it is a swipeable screen. So you can easily swipe to the next page or the previous page or add as many pages as you want to the feature, function, or tool of your choice. Now, of course, you can customize these tools to whatever you wish. Let's create a simple composite with it. So here we are in our Finder, and as you can notice, just as soon as we get into our Finder or Explorer, it changes its icons accordingly. So let's just drag this background and drop it into Photoshop just like this. Now you can of course zoom in and zoom out with this. If you want to adjust it, you can press Ctrl or Command T or assign one of these buttons to that. Now these are knobs, but these knobs are also clickable. So what I've done is that I've assigned this knob for Ctrl or Command T. So if I press that, it's going to show up. Let's just place it right over here and place her just like this. All right. Now again, you don't have to press enter. It's a muscle memory that I've developed. So instead of having to pick up your pen and press the enter is right over here as well. So again, muscle memory. So if we were inside the transform and we had to apply it, commit it, just press the enter right over there. Now for the shadows, you can simply change the blend mode of this layer from normal to multiply. Now we need the subject as well and a little more shadow. So let's make a duplicate of that. You can simply click on this knob right there. I've assigned it that way. So we have more shadows. Now you on the subject, just click on that one more time. And this time let's change it to normal. And we want to select just the subject. So we can go to the quick selection tool right there and simply click on select subject. Photoshop automatically does the selection, and then let's click on the mask button right over there. Now as you can see, there's some edge around the shadows, and that's from the previous image. And for that, you're going to select the first shadow layer, hold the shift key here. Shift is assigned to this one and click on the other one and then create a group out of it. Now you can also assign one of these to create a group. Now I've not done that yet. So I'm just going to press Ctrl or Command G. Now it is a group. Now let's create a mask out of it by clicking on the mask button. Take the brush, black as the foreground color. I'm going to take a regular brush, not one of these fancy brushes. So regular soft round brush. And with black as the foreground color, just erase the extras. Of course, to make the brush size smaller or bigger, you can use one of these knobs. You can also control the hardness with this. All right. There you have it, my friend. Now let's say you wanted to crop this image with the rectangular marquee tool. You would have to go to this group and select the rectangular marquee tool. Instead of doing that, you can have just one section in Loupedeck CT for one tool. You don't have to open groups. So just click on one of these. The rectangular marquee tool is selected, and now you can crop it in whatever way you want. After you have made the crop, just select the crop tool right there. And then you can just hit enter. It is cropped that way. Now again, if you want to add a vignette, you don't have to open the group again. You just click on the elliptical marquee tool, just touch there, and let's make an ellipse right there and create a curves adjustment layer and just take it down. All right. But we wanted just the opposite, right? So select the mask right there and press Ctrl or Command I or assign one of these. So I'm going to click right there and now we have a vignette. You must think Unmesh is joking. Well, let's go to the mask properties and simply increase the feather to a higher value. Let's go for 490, looks okay. And there you have a pretty nice vignette. Now we still have to color match, but we'll get to that later. As I told you before, access to tools and functions becomes easier. So in this case, let's make a copy of the background layer by pressing Ctrl or Command J or assign one of these. And let's say we want to remove these distracting dishes right there, satellite instruments. Anyway, so you can make a selection with the lasso tool right over here. And instead of going through a tedious process, you can just press Content Aware Fill right over here. And it fixes that. Now press this key for Ctrl or Command D or deselecting. Now we can go right here as well and select this one meticulously. And again, we're going to just press here. And it fixes that too. So see how easy that was? Now we need to take time here, but you get the point. And to fit the image to the canvas, we simply touch right there. And it was done. Moving on to the second feature that I like, and that is you really become the king of the brush tool. You get a lot of controls and it just becomes so much more easier. So here you are with the brush tool. Of course, you can control the size. And let's take a fun color so that you can see what's happening. So we're gonna take blue. So size, as you're doing anything, let's say dodging and burning, or even some intricate masking, it becomes very crucial for you to easily control the size. You don't have to press the bracket keys here again and again, or if you're using a Wacom tablet, you don't have to press this key and then just hover over it, then just drag it right or left. So you can do it on the fly with these knobs, and that's a good thing. Also, as you're working with the size, it's important that you can control the hardness as well. So we can just make it a little more harder, very hard, or softer, easily, just with these two knobs. During dodging and burning, or even painting or illustration, flow is another important parameter. So you can control all of these three with that. So let's say we're doing something and I wanted to control the flow accordingly. I can easily do that. Have a look. Flow is being controlled. So we can go very light, a little more higher flow, higher intensity, a little more higher intensity, so on and so forth. You get the point. So on the fly, these parameters of the brush. Now, of course, if you can control flow, you can control opacity, but I tend to not touch the opacity of the brush. I tend to do everything with the flow because flow is a more realistic representation of the brush intensity. So I've removed the opacity and kept flow. If I wanted that, I could also have opacity, but I barely use it. Now, apart from these knob controls, you can even have more. You just have to go to the Loupedeck settings and add another page. Now in this page, I've added one scroll history. We can also add opacity if you wanted to. So we can have brush opacity. Let's drag it and drop it right over here. Now let's get back to Photoshop. If we just swipe it, yes, this is swipeable. We'll get to more functions. Now this is an interesting thing, scroll history. It's like scrolling into history, going back and forth, undo and redo in a knob. So cool, isn't it? Of course, you have opacity of the tool. In this case, it's the brush tool. Now, I found a little bug here and I'm sure Loupedeck can fix it. Maybe it's just my system. I'm not sure. So let's say you wanted to change the angle of the brush. So now I can make the brush a little more squished right here. And let's say you wanted to change the angle of it. Now, of course, you can assign a knob to do that and change the angle. I really wish it was opposite that way, but I understand. If you increase the angle, it increases right there. But that just means that it'll go anti-clockwise. So if there was an option to make the knobs opposite, that would be cool. But that's not the glitch here. The glitch is the rotation is fine. However, if you choose any other brush, let's choose one of these fancy brushes right here. All right. Now, if I try to rotate it, it just goes back to the regular soft round brush. So it is a glitch. I've tried it again and again to turn off and on my computer, and I hope and I'm sure they're gonna fix it in the future. So let's say we select this pretty nice brush, and if I start to rotate it, it'll just go back to the soft round brush. So pretty nice feature. I really want this improved. The third feature that I like is that it's super simple to customize, and the Loupedeck app has some native actions according to the application that you're using. So this is the interface you see. Looks exactly like your Loupedeck, and wherever you click, you'll be able to customize that. So let's double click right here. It's going to take you to the touchscreen pages. Now, as you can see, there are a lot of pages and one page that I have added. Let's add one more page right here. Let's add a normal page and you can name it whatever you want. Let's leave it at that and click on add. So let's say you want a shortcut for exporting your image. So you can simply just search here, export. Do you have export as? Right there. So let's just drag it and drop it right there. And you have export as. Now when you're working with your document in Photoshop and you want to go to export as, all you got to do is to just touch there and it'll take you to export as dialog box. Now that was simple. Let's do something more exciting. Let's say you want to get this image ready for Instagram And for that, I have an action. So if I go to Window, Actions, and inside of social media, I have this Instagram action. So if I play that, it's going to set it accordingly. But before it, I want to crop it into a square. So let's select the crop tool right over there and set the ratio to square. This looks fine and hit enter. Now let's play the action. So let's get into the action and choose Instagram and click on play. Now it simply resizes according to Instagram, adds a little sharpness and a little contrast. Now it might look too much for you, but when you zoom out, this is what really pops in a mobile phone. So what if you wanted this to be a button with a custom icon? So here we are back in Loupedeck, and if we go to Photoshop, inside of that, user actions, here we have the Instagram. Let's drag it and drop it right over there. But that will not bring up the icon, what we want. Okay, so let's delete that. Instead, let's create a custom action, custom function right there. Click on plus. And first, we want to simply play the Instagram action. Okay, let's name this Instagram. I also want to play one more action. If we go back to Photoshop, I have a branding action. I also want to play that. So can we do that in a sequence? Yes, we can. So click on plus. After playing the Instagram action, I wanted to play the Insta branding action. And we can choose a custom icon for it. Click on plus and choose file. Let's select this Instagram logo and click on select. Save it again. Now we will have the Instagram function inside of the custom section right here. Let's drag it and drop it right over here. And now let's open Photoshop again. Now in Photoshop, let's go back to how it was after cropping. And all we have to do now, let's tap there, and as soon as you do that, it'll play both the actions for you, and sometimes it misses. Have a look. It missed playing the second action. There is no branding right over there. How do we fix that? I think we need to add a little bit of delay between both of those actions. So let's click on the settings of the Instagram, and between those, click on plus, and this has to be just a delay, right? And we can set the delay to be, let's say, 150. Let's check that and then place it between these two. Click on save, and now it should work properly. Let's move back to Photoshop, and now let's tap right over here. And as you can see, it played both the actions. There's a branding, and it also adjusted for Instagram. Now the number of ways you can customize the navigation dial is just limitless. And we'll get to that later. Moving on to the fourth essential feature, and that is seamless switching between different apps and also inside apps between different modules. Let me share that with you. So let's say you're in Photoshop and you see these icons which relate to Photoshop. Now if you apply a camera raw filter here, first of all, let's duplicate the layer, and then let's go to filter and then camera raw filter. You will notice that all of these settings would change according to camera raw. Now, even if it is inside one app, it changes and adapts accordingly according to the different modules. Also, when you switch to another app, so let's say I switch to Illustrator, it changes according to Illustrator. So let's say I select this text and I can just rotate it to change the font. Have a look how convenient it is to just move through different fonts. Now, if you wanted to change the text size, just tap there. It is also touchscreen, and now rotate. It'll change the size of the text. Now, I wish it would be more sensitive so that we don't have to make so many rotations, but it's possible. Moving on to the fifth feature, and this is a major one. It is the ability to create workspaces. So you can have a whole different workspace for retouching, a whole different workspace for just design, graphic design, and maybe a separate workspace for basic Photoshop operations. Now, I'm not talking about multiple pages inside of this. Yes, you can have multiple pages here. And first of all, let's select Photoshop from right here. You can have multiple pages here. You can have multiple pages for these knobs. All that is possible. You can have multiple faces for this watch-like dial, navigation dial. Instead of that, you can have a whole new workspace. So to create a new workspace, you can click on the plus button right there. At the moment, as you can see, we have three workspaces. The main tools, we have layer properties, and it is by default, and we have color picker workspace. Now we can create our own workspace. We can create our own entire profile from scratch. It's up to you. So I'm just going to add a workspace to this. Let's say we create a workspace for retouching. Okay. And you can assign it as the home workspace. So when you open Photoshop, this would be the default workspace. So let's just not do that. By default, it has the time. So let's just delete it, and you can set it from scratch. Let's say for retouching, what are the tools you need? You can place it here. What are the dials and the knobs you would be doing? You can just adjust the settings accordingly. For instance, one of the things I do with my retouching is that I create a dodge and burn layer. To do that, let's scroll down and we have to create a custom action. So in the custom, click on plus. First of all, we want to create a brand new layer. So now we can just choose new layer here. So this would be a new blank layer. We want to set the blend mode of that layer to soft light. So now let's search for soft light. Set soft light blending mode. So we're going to add a step and just drag and drop it right over there. And the next thing we definitely want to do is to select the brush tool. So let's create a new step and drop it right there. And we want to have the foreground color to white and the background color to black. So let's add one more and let's set the foreground color to white. Let's search for white. So foreground color white, let's add one more, and this has to be black, background color black. This should be enough, right? Let's just name it dodge and burn layer. Simple dodge and burn layer. Let's click on save. We should have it inside custom. Let's drag it and drop it right over there. We can also choose an icon for it. So if you click on the gear, you can choose whatever icon you wish. Let's go to Photoshop. Now let's try the simple dodge and burn layer. Now we don't have that workspace here. So how do we get to that workspace? Well, let's create a link for it. Now in the main tools, I want to create a link for that workspace. So let's first of all take this away. I want to create a link here for our retouching workspace. So let's just drag our retouching workspace and drop it right there. And now when we get back to Photoshop, in our main page, you would see this retouching. Click on that. Now we are in retouching workspace. Now in here as well, we can create a link to the main workspace as well. If I click on that, it's going to create a brand new layer with soft light. It will automatically select the brush tool for you. And now you are ready to dodge and burn. Let's talk about the sixth essential feature, and that is definitely the navigation wheel, which comes with a touchscreen. Now there's a lot of ways you can customize this. In the Loupedeck app, let's click on that. Of course, you can add a lot of faces to it. So if you click on the plus, you have options to have two functions, one on the left, one on the right. This way as well, you can divide it. You can divide it into 3, any way you want. You can also have a list. You can have 4, and you can also choose foreground and the background color. Yes, you can do that easily with the touch there. So I have created an interesting screen here. On the left hand side, I have placed blending mode. In the middle, opacity, and on the right, the fill amount. This is very essential for placing any texture or let's say a light leak. So here I have a couple of paper textures. Let's open one of these into Photoshop. Let's drag it and drop it right over here. Now on top of that, we need an image, an interesting one. So I'm just going to drop this image. Now let's make it a little larger, probably fill it. And now here's the screen that we added. The watch face, in other words. So right here on the left hand side, we are on blending modes. We have selected that, and now when I rotate the wheel, it's going to scroll through different blend modes and it's going to give you a preview as to how your image is going to look like in each and every blend mode. So let's say you want to go with hard mix. Now, although this does not look like a blend mode we would go with, this is one of those special 8 blend modes where fill controls the projection and the intensity in a very different way than opacity. So in this case, if we choose the fill amount, first of all, let's choose the opacity amount, and then if I decrease it, it just fades it. However, if you choose the fill, and now when you decrease it, it's a completely different game here. Have a look. The way the projection is changing, super cool, isn't it? Now, as far as the foreground and the background colors are concerned, let me share that with you as well. So let's go to the main tools, and if I add one more face, and let's add the foreground color here. Hit add. You can also add a background color, but I'm just going to demonstrate how it works. So we are with the brush tool. All right. Now let's swipe in to the foreground color face. Now have a look on the left. It's white, right? Now if you swipe down, it's going to start getting darker and darker. If you swipe to the left, it's just going to decrease the saturation. It's already gray. If you swipe to the right, it's going to increase the saturation. See? Now if you rotate this wheel, it's going to change the hue. So right now it's green, right? If I change the wheel, it's going to change the hue. If I change it again, it's going to change the hue. If you want to make it a little darker, you're just going to have to Slide down. Now it's a little darker. See how that works? Now the next feature is more of a novelty feature, but can be useful to some. Now let's have a look at this again. Let's say you just want to type little things and you don't want to go back to the keyboard. Your hand is busy here and you don't want to just lift it up and move it right here. Then what you can do, let's add some text. Click on the T right there and just click here once. Now to type, if you don't want to lift your hand, you can hold the function key and click on the keyboard button. Now you can type from here. Now it's not absolutely fully functional, very easy to use. It's not that, but you can kind of use this. So let's write work, W-O-R-K. Works pretty good. Let's adjust it again. Just press this one. And now if you want to put the text behind the subject, let's turn it off, select the subject layer, and then click on select subject. With the quick selection tool selected, you're gonna have to go back to the text and just click on the mask button. Now while you do, just hold the Alt key or the Option key and then do that so that it creates a negative mask. So there you have it. Unlink the mask, select the text, and then you can move it in whatever way you want. And the mask won't move. Now as we learned with the previous examples, we can definitely create custom actions, and that brings us to feature number 8, and that is the ability to create custom actions and sequences. Let me share with you a simple example. Time and again when we are compositing, we create clipped adjustment layers, right? So what if you could do that with Loupedeck? So for it, again, let's try it on another page, and we can also create a page just for compositing or a whole workspace just for compositing. For simplicity, we're gonna go to the last page here and let's create a custom action. So click on the plus right there and let's name this clipped curves. We time and again add a curves adjustment layer and clip it to the subject. And for it, let's choose curves first. So we're going to create a curves adjustment layer, and then let's add one more step. Search for clip, create clipping mask of the same. Let's save it. And it's already showing up inside of the search. So let's just drag it and drop it right there. You can also create an icon for it. Let's go back to Photoshop. Let's select the subject, and simply we can just click on or tap on clipped curves. It automatically does that for you. Now you can just adjust for color. I feel that I need to darken this a little bit. There you go. Just make the shadows a little faded. Maybe take the reds down. Now as we take the reds down, we have to take it up a little bit in the shadows. And let's do the same with the greens. Let's take it down slightly. Take it up back in the shadows, and then with the blues we can simply take it up a notch. There you have it, a little bit of color matching. Here's the before, here's the after, goes a long way. Moving on to the final 9th feature that I like, and this is one of the features that make Loupedeck shine. Not just Loupedeck CT, but the previous versions as well. This is what it was actually made for in the very beginning. The ability to adjust the image just using dials and the knobs and adjust different dials simultaneously, see what works better for us. So I have a raw photo. I took this photo in Vegas, I think. So let's just drag it and drop it into Photoshop. That's going to open up in Camera Raw. This also applies to the Camera Raw filter. Now, as soon as Camera Raw opens, the functions of the Camera Raw shows up. First of all, let's tap here so that it's full screen. Now here's the fun. You can adjust the temperature and the exposure. Altogether, it's one of my favorite things to do. Looks like a DJ, but you get the point. Really adjust it to your liking, see what looks good to you, increase or decrease the shadow, play with the contrast of the image, and there are more functions here. There's a second page. If you swipe up, now you have tint to play with, you have vibrance, you have dehaze, and if you want to look at the before and after, just tap here. Before, after. See that? Going through all of these features for you, there's one thing we can surely conclude. And that is, Loupedeck CT is one of the very few devices that is so well integrated with Photoshop. It allows you not only to add functions that are already in there in Photoshop, but also custom user actions. Everything is customizable, the buttons and devices are of great quality and so well weighted, and the productivity boost that you get is what you're paying for here. If you're interested in picking up one of these, do check out the link in the description. And I understand if this looks like too much of an investment for you, and it is. You can also opt for Loupedeck Live, which is the exact same thing at half the price and half the console, but it has all the essential controls you need. I hope I could show you something new. Thank you so very much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Till then, stay tuned and make sure that you keep creating.